Hello, Blazers. Welcome to episode 170 of UAB Green and Told, originally debuted on Monday, February 23rd, 2026. Through this podcast, we highlight the stories that make UAB and its people special. Want to hear more? Find past episodes at alumni.uab.edu/greenandtold on Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. And while you're there, leave a review to help more Blazers find us. I'm Greg Berry, a UAB alum and Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Chris Patel grew up watching his parents trade the skyscrapers of Chicago for the sunsets of the Gulf Coast. That bold leap planted a seed, one that grew into a mindset of risk and reward. During his time at UAB, Chris didn't just hit the books, he built a business. And as you'll hear, his story is all about creating his own path.
I discovered at a very early age that I really don't work well under other people. And so my goal with college was to get here and network.
And even as graduation loomed, the grind didn't stop. His mentor noticed something normally unusual. His classroom became a launch pad.
This is a student who was taking calls. His phone was ringing in class and he was stepping out briefly to take the call and come back in. And I knew it wasn't his friends. These were like potential clients and business partners and stuff like that.
And forget about the perfect plan. Chris embraced a different playbook for success.
I think the goal should be to make money first and then figure it out. Dr. Murphy says, ready, fire, aim.
Chris Patel's parents made the decision to leave behind Chicago traffic and carve out a life in South Alabama. For Chris, that move meant growing up with mud on his boots and a love for four-wheelers, all while absorbing the entrepreneurial spirit at home. A double major, his classroom was only half the story. His other classroom, the real world, where deals happen fast and lessons hit harder. His journey blends small-town grit with big city ambition, and it's still accelerating.
Normal stuff, four-wheelers, off-roading, I don't normal Alabama kind of stuff. I had a Jeep. I was really into modding that and all that kind of stuff.
So when it came time to apply to colleges, what went into your decision? Because ultimately you moved from Spanish Fort all the way up to Birmingham, 3-4 hours away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it was kind of an easy decision. South Alabama was too close. Tuscaloosa was in the middle of nowhere. I'm not a huge football kind of guy, so Auburn probably wasn't the safest for me. And just the program and everything that they got going on in Birmingham and it being pretty much one of the biggest cities in Alabama, I figured it would be a great opportunity to move out to another city and then try to better myself.
What was campus like when you got here? You're a relatively new alum. It's only been a year or so, but it's even grown in the time you've been on campus and a member of the Blazer family.
Yeah, it's crazy. Every time I drive by, I'm just like, damn, there's so many new buildings going up. It's like when I was driving by, everything was like a parking deck. And now it's just like you guys got these huge, huge buildings. But yeah, I like how high tech they've kept everything.
What did you want to do when you got on campus? Was the goal always entrepreneurship and finance?
Yeah, that was always the goal from the beginning. Ever since a young age, I've always known that that's what I wanted to go into. Never really had sought out, going to go work for somebody else. I discovered at a very early age that I really don't work well under other people. And so my goal with college was to get here and network. And with Dr. Murphy's program and entrepreneurship, it basically allowed me to network with a bunch of people that are still pretty useful in my business today. I've made a lot of really good connections and just a bunch of really interesting people that I still am friends with today and still interact with on a day-to-day basis.
Where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from?
I think it mainly comes from my parents. They were immigrants from India. They came over in like the 80s, I believe, 80s to 90s. And they were originally from Chicago and they left everything in Chicago. My dad was a mechanical engineer for Caterpillar. He had left everything that he knew and had in Chicago to move down to Alabama to start, new venture going into commercial real estate. And I think that was the biggest inspiration as a kid. I, grew up sawing his success and it was just like, it was a lot of pressure there. I don't know if it was biggest one was being an immigrant. It's like, all right, well, if I did this well, you got to do even better than me. So that was one of the biggest things.
Did you have a side hustle in high school where maybe you were selling, soda to friends at the lunchroom or anything like that?
I had discovered one of my, I don't know, all the kids in Spanish Fort High School had some sort of fun like off-roading. It's just the small, I think, country town kind of thing to do. And so I had discovered, buying my through my Jeep, like I could sell Jeep parts on like Facebook Marketplace and make more money than what they're listed for on like eBay. And so that's really where it all got started. I had discovered it's really funny now that I look back and think about it. It was light bars out of everything. I was buying them for like $30 on eBay, selling them for 100, and that's really where I got my first taste of good money. And I was like, man, I like this.
When you first got to campus, that first tour you took, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Did you visit the Collat school? Did you meet Dr. Murphy?
I don't think I met Dr. Murphy in the tour, but I did see the Collat school, and I was like, damn, this is really nice. Yeah, and we saw, I think, a few other colleges, and it's just like it came nowhere close. I mean, Dr. Murphy took us all to Chicago and even DePaul, and it was like, man, we got a lot of really good luxuries in Alabama too. So I was like, yeah, Collat was definitely the one.
Do you remember the first time you met Patrick Murphy?
Yeah, I still do. I'm giving, I guess I've been invited to talk to the same class that I got introduced to Dr. Murphy in 270. That's kind of how I started my company, is through the networks I met in that class. Dr. Murphy had done a really good job, I feel like, of making everybody break ice in the sense and like communicate and talk to everybody else. Like, hey, what do you got going on? Or what's your thing? And what do you do? And I had met somebody in that class who had told me that his parents owned a fuel supply company. And after class, I just got to networking with him. And then that's when I discovered, ironically enough, in 270, that there was a business opportunity for me here in Birmingham with everything I know with my parents.
I want to get to Krown Petroleum here in a little bit, but Dr. Murphy, I'm going to address this question to you. Do you remember the first interactions you had with Chris?
I do. He was a very young student in ENT 270, the entrepreneurial mindset. Like a lot of them, they all come in with a lot of ideas and past experiences, but they're young, so a lot of their past experiences are kind of limited, but their ideas are relatively larger because of the fact that they're young. They think big. But our job is to create an environment where they can do the kinds of things that Krishna is talking about right now. And I do remember him coming in, and what I really remember is over time how he developed, because in ENT 270, which is our cornerstone class, he was a lot like the other students. But by the time he got to ENT 425, which is our capstone class, this is a student who was taking calls. His phone was ringing in class, and he was stepping out briefly to take the call and come back in. And I knew it wasn't his friends. These were like potential clients and business partners and stuff like that. So we tried to build a program that will accommodate highly entrepreneurial students like Krishna. But I remember all of those things with him big time. And I knew he was going to be a great entrepreneur.
Do you remember a point where you looked at him and said, you know what, this kid has it. He's got the it factor.
When we were at Innovation Depot one time, probably about halfway through his time at UAB, he had rented out a space over there. He's in another space now. It's actually the largest space in the building because his company's grown so much. But when he moved into that space and he showed it to me, and I've been working with entrepreneurs for 25 years. I know how to look at a space and very quickly figure out if they're doing something or not. I could tell by how much stuff was laying around. It showed me they were busy. There was always somebody in there, and he was in the center of all of that. And that was the moment. And we were talking, and then just like a year later, I went back and looked at what he was doing again. And that's when I decided he was going to be our outstanding student. He was about to graduate later that year. And that was when I knew, that was the moment when I saw his space outside the business school at Innovation Depot, and it looked like a thriving entrepreneurial business. That was the moment.
A lot of people might sit back and look at entrepreneurship as You know what? It's just going to happen. It's going to come about. We have classes. We have a whole program designed around entrepreneurship. What all goes into that program?
There are Mozarts in our incoming student population. And if the world doesn't put a piano in front of them and train them properly, the world will never know their talent. And so we have to create this universe of connections and networking where everybody's diverse gifts can come out. So we do that to an extent that a lot of people would think is very almost radical in how we teach. But we combine that with rigorous conceptual based education. So, in other words, we don't use textbooks. We don't do a lot of traditional exams. We pull concepts straight out of the literature. And it's a lot of work for the faculty member who has to make that scholarly material intelligible to the students. But what you can do if you do it that way, you can customize the material so it hits the diverse students exactly where they are. So if you think about like that theory and community and then the practice element, which is we have advantages at UAB because we're a very outreach-oriented school. We can do a lot of things in Birmingham and with Innovation Depot. We believe theory without practice is pointless and practice without theory is blind, and we bring them together through a strong community. And that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like, if that makes sense. So it is a different style of education, but it's even more rigorous than the traditional model. The students work harder.
Chris, when you were selling the Jeep parts and you're just doing this on Facebook Marketplace or wherever it was, when you got on campus, did you already have kind of an idea of, you know what, I would like to try this or this or this? Or did Krown Petroleum just kind of pop in and that was the first idea that you had?
So I think the first year I wasn't in 270. It was my sophomore year when I took 270. So prior to that, that's what I was doing. I was just I was selling those same parts in Birmingham, still making like money, which is good, but not making crazy amounts of money. And then during that 270 class, that's really when things started taking off from there. It was a really rapid progression. It was like from the first day of class, that night I had met and networked with somebody else that was in our same field. Literally, he was just sitting 2 seats behind me, and I would have never known. I would have never, had the time to ask him if it was any other kind of ecosystem or any other type of class where they're frowned upon. You talking to other classmates or stepping outside or that kind of stuff. But yeah, from the time I met my other classmate to actually starting my company, it was less than a month. So it was crazy.
Do you remember the instance that Krown was born?
Yeah, I still do.
Take me through that.
So yeah, like I said, this other a classmate that was sitting right behind me, he had mentioned that his dad has a fuel supply company. So I come from a background of my parents build a bunch of commercial real estate. A large aspect of that is fuel stations. So they are putting in petroleum infrastructure and all kinds of things pertaining to that world. And I was talking to him and I was like, oh, that's interesting. We're in kind of the same line of work. And then he was like, yeah, my dad is looking for somebody just like you. I need to network you with my dad. And so he had introduced me to his dad literally that night, just like on a phone call. And then his dad was like, yeah, we probably need to, get together and talk like tomorrow, could really use the help. And so it was all the stones were falling into place like rapidly. It wasn't just like a sit back and, okay, well, let me make a business plan as to how I'm going to, go about doing this or anything like that. It was just like a, follow the wind kind of situation. And I'm really glad I did, because it went from, something a skill that I had to this ginormous business in less than like 2 years.
At what point did you actually sit down and write that business plan? Because I mean, you're kind of doing things backwards. Everybody's taught in business, do that and then create a business.
Believe it or not, I still don't have a business plan. It's never been my, I think the goal should be to make money first and then figure it out. Dr. Murphy says, ready, aim, fire, right? Or ready, fire, aim. Sorry. Yeah. And that's kind of what I did there. And I think that's what allowed me to be as successful as I was. A lot of people look at college as like, well, I got to go through college first, and then, I'll start my company after that. That's just so, what the opposite of what the entrepreneurship program teaches you. It teaches you to like go out there and start doing what you got to do. You know what I mean? You can figure out all the legal stuff later, and that's kind of what I did. I figured out and formed the LLC like a year after the fact. So looking back, it wasn't the best tax moves, but I'm glad I did what I did.
Ready, fire, aim. Patrick, elaborate.
A lot of people get this wrong because, I mean, we're kind of conditioned to think in terms of ready, aim, fire. That means plan everything out before you take action. But that, in my world, the entrepreneurship education world, and in Krishna's world, the entrepreneurial world, where you have fast-growing firms, that kind of approach tends to be associated with non-lean organizations and a lot of waste. The reason is because the environment will change after you make the plan. The action is not going to work out according to plan anyway. And so if you sink a lot of time and effort and maybe money into planning, the correction is going to be even more costly. We say ready, fire, aim. We still have ready, that it comes first for a reason. The education that somebody like Krishna receives and the thinking and the networking and all of that, it prepares you to take action. And then when you take action, you do it intentionally based on your readiness. But we're taking more of what we call general systems theory approach, where trial and error, conjecture and refutation. You make an innovative move, you do it because you get feedback from the move, and the feedback is generated from the aberration from the goal, or the degree to which it didn't work out as planned. That feedback loop is vitally important to the evolution of the business. So ready, fire, aim. Aim comes last because you're constantly correcting your path toward the target, even if it's a moving target. And if you aim first, if the target's moving, you can't do that. And so it keeps you lean and it keeps you vital as an entrepreneur.
Chris, did you think you had lightning in the bottle at that point when you were talking to your friend's dad?
Yeah, I looked at it and I was just like, well, I need something to do. It was kind of that weird COVID time, so you couldn't really interact with anybody, and it was just like, worst case scenario, it's something for me to do, something for me to stay busy, something for me to meet some new people, get introduced to all the other people that are around the Birmingham ecosystem. And the other aspect of it was, hey, I could make a business out of this. So that was always in the forefront of my mind, but I did not think that it would take off as far as it did.
When did you realize, okay, this is real, this is growing, this is something?
Yeah, I think it was about last year of college. When I was about 20, I think 21, 22. And we had clients like Love's, Pilot, Flying J calling us. And it's just like, circling back to the whole entrepreneurship ecosystem. It's like I had to take a lot of other, core classes as part of the business degree. Everybody else, like my marketing professor or like my international business professor, every time I'd have to take a phone call, they'd be like, what the hell? Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, you got to pay attention to this class. Like, this is not okay. I'm not gonna let you go out. Dr. Murphy let me, you know what I mean? He didn't look at me any kind of weird way. His professors never looked at me any kind of weird way for going outside or having to like change gears for a moment and then come back. Like, it's really like the ecosystem that you put yourself in that would allow somebody to grow. And so I think that would be the biggest aspect of it.
Patrick, what kind of advice were you giving him during this time? I mean, you're talking about some mega Fortune 500 companies, Loves, and the list goes on and on.
Right. Well, the risk that we have in education, this happens a lot in entrepreneurship. When a student who's in school, typically what happens when they succeed on the level that Krishna has, they drop out. Because the demands of school clash with the demands of the business. And if you have a business that's growing, year over year, 7-figure business, 8-figure business, there's a little bit of a clash there. And a lot of them do drop out. There are a lot of famous stories, Zuckerberg, Michael Dell. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, because that traditional approach will clash with that. So again, what we do is we try to make a very flexible, progressive approach in which if he has a call and it's a big contract and his business needs it, take the call. But we don't really follow set hours per se. So we can have a follow-up conversation. And if he missed something in class, we can give it to him later through a remedial video or a conversation or something like that. Or We structure a lot of our work through teams, and there's a lot of social learning later in our program. He can follow up with one of his peers who can fill him in on what he missed. And so with that flexibility, we're able to accommodate the kinds of demands on a young entrepreneur's time, like Krishna is talking about.
How did you get involved with some of these companies, Chris? Because, I mean, getting in the door cannot be easy.
Yeah. So believe it or not, still to this day, we've spent $0 on marketing apart from our website. If you classify that as marketing, it's all been word of mouth. So it's really easy. I feel like in today's society, especially with blue collar work, or really, I guess it could be applied to any line of work, to be successful as long as you have a work ethic. So all of the people that were competition in the Alabama area, North Alabama, they kind of told me like, hey, look, they've had this family owned business for like the last 2-3 generations. Their kids are like, no, this is too dirty, we don't want to do this, we're going to go into, I don't know, software engineers or being a doctor or whatever. And they were like, well, we want to help you succeed. So like, I don't have what it takes to fulfill these guys anymore, so I'm going to pass them your way. So as long as you can help them and grow with them, like that's all we need from us, is that us as an older company, we were able to pass them off to somebody else that might be a little more agile.
We've talked a lot about Krown Petroleum, but we haven't talked about what that need was that you saw and capitalized on. Talk about what it is and what your company does.
Yeah, so our company is petroleum infrastructure. So anything fuel, we do it. So a majority of the work we do is putting in petroleum infrastructure. So think underground tanks, underground piping, motors, all this kinds of, you wouldn't know just because it's all under the ground, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands of moving parts, at any given gas station, truck stop, airport, hospital, whatever, to keep, vital systems, like in the case of gas station pumps, the case of hospitals, they got the generators, and then in case of airports, they got, giant jet fuel reserves and trucks that they pump the planes with. So it's all that kind of equipment that we put in as well as we maintain. So the second largest part of what we do is maintaining all of it. So we actually go out, and if anything's broken, we have what's called rapid response time. So we got crews that are strategically placed like all throughout the state. Their jobs are to go out. We get calls at 2 or 3 a.m. depending on who the customer is or how crucial their fueling systems are, to go out and get them back up and going. One thing that I've been told by my mentors is without fuel, you wouldn't have air or water. So it's like, looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. it's the most crucial element that we have.
How many clients, how many FTEs, how many part-time employees, how many contractors are you working with today?
So unfortunately, with the current state of Gen Z, we're hiring and firing so many different people. I can't keep up with how many people I have. That's how bad it is. But we are in 5 states now. So Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Georgia, and we're still growing. So we're looking right now, we're driving more and more expansion into Texas. And just the goal is to be in 50 states in the next 10 years, and then throughout the course of the lifetime, be worldwide.
How many Krishna Patels are there compared to how many people don't get anything off the ground?
It's a question of time. So if you look at like over the course of one's lifetime and you apply that to the students who come into our program, there's a lot of Krishna Patels. If you look at the ones who are in the program right now, it's probably 1 out of 500, maybe 1 out of 1,000. If you scale that down a little bit and talk about students who start businesses right now while they're in school that grow and get positive traction and make money, it's about 5 out of 100. But that's enough. And I think that ratio holds for a lot of context if you look at a moment in time. We don't really do that. We think in terms of decades, and we think of a return on the investment that one like Krishna puts into their education. So we do have students that graduate and they try to start a business while they're in school, but it doesn't really pan out yet, that's okay. Because 80% of the jobs come from the entrepreneurial sector, 4 out of 5, meaning growing companies that are clearing hurdles and working through things. And what we teach them is this entrepreneurial mindset that is extremely attractive to those entrepreneurial firms that are hiring, because our students can hit the ground running. And that's an excellent stepping stone to becoming an entrepreneur. So if they do launch, and if they're ready to launch while they're here, we will help them. We have teams of students, we have a network, we have a lot of resources here that we can use to help students in the program. 9 out of 10 times that venture will fail, but that's okay. They can come back and try again. And if they want to keep it on the side and make it like a side hustle or project, that's cool too, because we have a whole population of companies out there who are looking for talent that we can place them with as they graduate. So it's not a straightforward answer, but if you look at it right now, maybe 1 out of 500, 1 out of 1,000. If you look at success rate, it's about 5% out of 100 that are really going to do anything while they're here. But if you look at the course of a lifetime, it's way up there. We, with the right education and the right mindset and the right work ethic, like Krishna mentioned earlier, I think entrepreneurship is the way forward for a lot of these young people who are coming to university right now.
Entrepreneurial programs aren't anything new. You've been working with them for 2 decades or so. But ours is kind of unique, especially when it comes to Alabama, if I remember right. Talk a
That's
little bit
right.
about your program and the uniqueness of it.
There's about 59 colleges or universities in the state of Alabama. 4 of them have a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship. We are one of them. We're the biggest, and we've made the most national impact for sure. We're the only one in the Alabama system, and we're right here in an amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem. UAB is an urban school, and urban schools can do things that other universities can't do as easily, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. So we're an extremely outreach-oriented program. The teams that I mentioned earlier, we put students into teams and they work with local entrepreneurs who are struggling with real problems that they're trying to work through. And we give them the capacity to work through those. And that's how the students learn, because they've already learned the theories and the concepts. But when they get to apply the theories and the concepts in the context of a real project like that, that's when they really learn. And they get experience that they can put on their resumes and on their LinkedIn profiles. And they also get jobs and internships, because a lot of those pro bono clients that show up end up hiring talent right out of our program. So when you think about UAB mission, outreach, Birmingham, the rigorous conceptual approach that we take, and the fact that we have a bachelor's degree allows us to make entrepreneurship part of the core of one's business education while they're here. It makes it very special.
I know what you would say when I ask, would you be where you are if it weren't for UAB? The answer would be no, because that's where you met those ties. Would you be able to sustain without what you've learned from UAB?
Probably not. It teaches you a lot about, people skills and like getting out there and networking with other people. I've always just kind of been a guy that keeps myself and not very opinionated. I think in Dr. Murphy's classes, I slowly became more and more and more opinionated on just different stuff. And so probably not.
That's Chris Patel. In 2024, he completed a double major in finance and entrepreneurship from the Collat School of Business. Today, he's founder of Krown Petroleum. He's proof that Blazers don't just learn, they lead. And that gives him a great idea of what it means to be a Blazer.
For me, it really just means like, UAB gave me everything, as far as I wouldn't be where I am today had I had not been in the UAB ecosystem. Not only was it an environment that Dr. Murphy had, it was UAB. I'm not sure how to quite express this, but a lot of it was me working out of my dorm room, and it's like nobody batted an eye to it. And it's just like, hey, why do you have like all kinds of random equipment in your dorm room? You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So it's like, I don't know how to answer that one fully, but that's the best I can.
Patrick, what about you? What does it mean?
I love the fact that we're an urban-oriented institution. I believe that our connection with the city of Birmingham is very symbiotic. UAB does a lot for Birmingham, but Birmingham does a lot for UAB. And it's a synergy, meaning unique opportunities come from the city and unique opportunities come from UAB. And we teach into the ecosystem in our program. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to make the kind of gains that we have or make the kind of impact that we have. So when I think about what does it mean to be a Blazer, I think a lot about Birmingham. I think a lot about my field, the field of entrepreneurship, serving as an endowed chair and national thought leadership and impact on the direction of the field and the ability to do that at a university, but thinking globally in that sense, but then acting locally with regard to our community and impact on our community. And you can do so much more in a rich urban environment with a great urban school like this. And to me, and the interaction between all of those things, when you put them together, it's a magical mix. And to me, that's what it means to be a Blazer.
That wraps up this episode of UAB Green and Told. And don't forget, you can listen to past episodes anytime at alumni.uab.edu/green and told on Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. Got a guest suggestion or want to join us for an episode? Drop us an email at greenandtold@uab.edu. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for the latest. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Blazers.